Hi, I'm Julie Bonner. Here's the last video about the Killacranky book, the annotated memoir, about his writings from a newspaper in Alabama. So finally, what's good about using something like Claude, which is what I used, ChatGPT, any of those tools can work, is that I kept like an operating document in a project on Claude. And that project kept track of all the tasks that we were working through, all the things that we were trying to validate, good, bad, or indifferent. Um, I also I put all of the letters in there, or all of the articles in there, so that it had the actual written out articles that he had published. I had all of that in there, plus a running manuscript of the book. So the initial manuscript, of course, we had agreed on the tool and I had agreed upon kind of how it was going to be sort of sectioned off at different points of the regimental timeline, um, and how that all lined up for those articles. Um, and then it was building out all of the rest. So for instance, I had an introduction, which basically gave kind of an intro to what I know about my two times great grandfather, when he was born, around when he died, um, what regiment he was in, um, that he's buried, um, at Duck River Cemetery in Alabama. And, some of that contextual information about him. Okay, so the introduction ran about 15 pages. It also gave an introduction to kind of how the layout of the book was going to be, and had its table of contents. And then each of the chapters was centered around a certain subset of the collection of articles. And each one had what we called a head note. And basically, that gives the reader sort of an introduction to what's being presented in the articles. It also talks through what could be corroborated and verified as fact and what isn't, that type of thing. Um, and also footnotes. All of those chapters had footnotes in them. And then there were a couple of appendices. One of the appendices was his full regimental timeline that we were always checking against, all the different battles that that regiment was in, and where we could corroborate stories with that timeline. Um, and I also had family history in there, basically showing the parents of Elijah Wilson Harper that I have in my family history, all of his 15 children and the two wives. Okay. And scattered throughout, I have a couple of pictures of Elijah. I had a couple of pictures of his first wife, one picture of his second wife. And I put those sort of at places where I felt like they would make the most sense. Um, I also used Claude to help me verify that the picture would render well in KDP. And it could actually help me with making sure that they were print worthy, which is nice to have. I don't expect an old photograph to be crystal clear. I don't expect it to be, something like I just took the picture today on my cell phone. Um, I just wanted it to be printable and be easily visible to a reader, of what they were looking at. Because they're not the greatest pictures in the world. I mean, I think the picture I have of Elijah in his Confederate uniform is one of the old tintype photos. You know, Photography was kind of starting around the Civil War. Um, and so it has some weirdness in the background, and I didn't feel that it was necessary to necessarily smooth that out or fix that for a reader. Okay. Um, And then finally, the last thing that Claude helped me put together was, give me a suggested description of this book, suggested categories on KDP, the publishing platform for Amazon. Um, Also, um, the photos are my photos. AI just made sure that they were publishable, that they would be easily readable. Oh, and I did have pictures of some of those Civil War records that I had gotten years ago. Uh, and so I had them at different places where the actual battle, the actual events were taking place. Um, and then it did research on annotated historical books like this one and sort of where the pricing might need to be. Now, the pricing was ultimately my decision. What I put in the description was my decision. You have to answer AI prompts, right? And frankly, here's the way I look at it. It's like, yeah, I used AI. You know, I'm not ashamed of that or anything like that. It didn't write all of it for me. I heavily edited this for my voice and what I wanted to say in it. It helped organize it. It helped to make suggestions about various different things. But I made the editorial decisions about everything and a lot of times rewrote certain things. And it learned how I liked to write over time. So it got actually better as writing as me, but it learns how to do that. Um, and one of the great things about doing a project rather than just doing the chat is the project will keep contextual knowledge. Because sometimes you'll have to have multiple chats and it's like you will have trained it to do certain things. And it's like you have to save that in the project as a project document. It will become um, it will unlearn all of a sudden certain things that you've taught it about what you want and things like that. So use a project for sure if you're doing some sort of a project like this because that keeps your knowledge. Because every time we created um, a new operating document or we updated it, I kept the newest version in the project documents just so we could keep a lot of the knowledge within that project itself because you'll get to where chat kind of runs out of space. Don't even know how to describe that. And we'd have to start a new chat. And it's like, okay, so what do we need to save from this chat that will help you realize where we are when I start a new one? And so I just kept prompting it like that and made it a whole lot easier to get through it. So yeah, it gave me basically a checklist of things to go through when I published it and uploaded the manuscript on Amazon, um, so that I could fill out all that information and then it published. So I hope that helps. You can always ask questions on these videos and I'll see those notifications and can answer you about it. But I hope this helps in if you ever run into this large library of things that all of a sudden you have in your possession of kind of how you can deal with it. Okay. All right. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll chat with you soon.